you'll actually support your own biology by just being a fucking animal. And I think that a lot of people, especially from religion, have this embarrassment or this shame associated with the act of sex because it is. Dude, it's freaking animal kingdom shit.
This segment is Relationship Q&A, where we give unbiased advice from a couple, us, who's been to hell and back. We are not professionals. Disclaimer. PSA, ****.
We take these questions from listeners or people who are on our email list or people from social media. We've got a long backlog of questions we never got to back in 2024. But here we are. First question. Why do we fight over the dumbest things? And how do we stop?
First of all, you're not alone. Whoever submitted this.
It's almost like the sign of a good relationship.
Honestly, like, in my opinion, I think it's better to fight about dumb things than huge things. Like, if you're fighting about huge things in your relationship, like infidelity or like gross, or like
gross fetishes.
You know, one person is lying all the time, or you're, beating your child.
Right. You want to avoid kind of the big three, right? It's stealing, lying, cheating.
Yeah.
Murder is also, it's kind of in a category of its own.
Right. You don't want to be doing that.
Those are the biggies.
Right.
But the thing is, and we could take this in a lot of different directions.
Totally.
And so I'm just going to try to hit on a few different points as it pertains to arguing over dumb things. The first one would be, be your own therapist. What is the thing behind the thing? We've said that on the show a lot. And essentially what that means is there's a theme behind the reason you're getting upset about something that is quote unquote dumb. And so, kind of a classic case could be you've either been dating a long time or you're married and you're past the novelty phase and you're starting to get annoyed by certain tendencies, certain patterns, certain idiosyncrasies that people have.
Easy thing to point to is like leaving your clothes on the bathroom floor after a shower. Or leaving your wet towel on the bed. It's really not a big deal. It's not.
And it's not in isolation. But if there's 50 of those, it accumulates to a big deal. If you've gotten in a big argument over something, or there has been lying or stealing or cheating, and then that is on top of it, it'll be the drop that spills the cup over.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing that I would observe, because a lot of times you can actually drill into the thing behind the thing, and it's a core value. It's honesty. It's listening, classic case. Hey, can you pick this up? Or can you make sure to clean up your dishes after you eat or what have you? And that's not followed. It's a matter of, wait, you didn't listen to me. Therefore, you don't value what I have to say. And so it does seem dumb that I'm complaining about the spaghetti stained thing that seems to permeate all sorts of dishes.
Seriously, why does spaghetti sauce stain forever?
Yeah.
It's like worse than blood.
Right. And it's like all of a sudden a ceramic plate turns into like a cotton white t-shirt of absorption.
Right. It's crazy.
Anyway, and plastic Tupperware?
Forget about it.
Get out of here. The point that I'm trying to make is like you may actually get into a dumb thing being the tail end of what's connected to a core value for you. So don't just disregard it and gaslight yourself for thinking that it's quote unquote dumb. It could be actually something important. The next point that I would want to bring up is it also may be indicative that you're scorekeeping, which is a no-no in a relationship if you want it to be harmonious. And so pay attention. Again, do the exercise. Does this connect to a core value? It might, probably worth a conversation. Great. If it's not, if you're just irritated, for instance, you could have a busy, stressful day at work. You could have something going on with your extended family. And that little thing that's so dumb just sets you off and you kind of vomit all that shit onto your significant other. That can be a situation where there's really no validity to the fact that you're getting insane over dumb items. And you may be going, that was like the 7th time he's done that. Or that was the 10th time she has not done the following. And we've talked about this all the time, but if you scorekeep in a relationship, it is a surefire way to end up in an argument.
Right.
A good relationship is based on unconditional love. Scorekeeping is not conditional. It is a game of scorekeeping where there's a winner and a loser. The point is, I've said this many times on the podcast, if you're scorekeeping in an attempt to win a particular argument or a particular competition with your partner, you've already lost. There is no scoreboard in a relationship.
Totally. And I think with this, I mean, I agree with everything that you've just said, but before the fight starts, first of all, like I said, everyone fights about dumb things. Chase and I, we still have like legitimate arguments sometimes that stem from something so dumb, like so dumb. So you're not alone. It's just like it's a normal thing for two people spending basically 24/7 together. Is you and I, like, we rarely are apart. So like any two people in the world having that much time together, interacting, I would say 97% of our time is completely harmonious and fun, where we're laughing and having a great time and getting along beautifully. There always will be that 3% though, that is seeing things differently, being triggered by the person. And sometimes those triggers are so dumb. So one thing that I do that I recommend to other people who you might find yourself getting triggered or getting angry about literally dumb things, it's so simple that I think people just overlook this or don't think about this. But like when you feel yourself like the heat rising in your chest because fill in the blank, ask yourself, pause, take a breath and ask yourself, does this actually matter? Simple question. Half of the time, 50% of the time of the things that trigger you probably don't actually matter. They don't. And it just puts things into perspective where I know what it feels like to live without you, and I don't want that. And if having a relationship and a marriage with you means that we get on each other's nerves from time to time, so be it. I'll take that. And it just puts things into perspective when you can just pause and really honestly ask yourself, is this actually important? And if it's not,
Yeah, and
let it go.
I think, like you said, this could be a trigger that's based on like your childhood. And so you're not even mad at your partner. You're mad at the environment that made you re-experience what your parent did to you. And so you're triggered and you're projecting something upon them. And then there's other times where it's legitimate and it's worth having a open conversation with your significant other. I think one thing that does happen insanely in an insane way as you're an adult is this sort of pseudo emotional experience of getting in a fight that people seek. And so there's not enough emotion felt in the relationship. And so there's an intentional or a passion.
Yeah.
And so there's an intentional charge or there's a unconscious
Poking
or looking for something wrong so that you can get validated. Hey, I'm going to try to get them to think that they're not enough for me so that I can have them then say I'm sorry so that I feel validated or loved. Or there's not enough spark. We're not having romantic chemistry. And so I'm going to take like this sort of bizarro alternative by making sure they still care in some way by making them mad. And like, that's a high school fucking thing. I remember being in high school and like friends of friends, girlfriends were like, oh, he's not doing this for you? Well, just threaten to break up with him and then he'll, do whatever, which is totally fine for a 14-year-old, not for a 34-year-old.
Right.
So if you sense that, if you feel that, if your significant other's doing that, have a come to Jesus conversation. You don't want that shit in your life.
Major red
If it's
flag.
dating, and then it's to marriage, and then it's
Right.
wife and husband, and cut it out.
Right. Question number 2. What do we do when one of us wants more sex than the other?
Well, the Bible says wives must submit to their husbands. So, ladies, sorry, you've got to abide by the Bible.
He's joking, people. If you know anything about Chase, you know that he is 100% joking.
So I've thought about this before, and, I don't actually know if this is a good metric, but I was sort of thinking like, okay, I think it's very, very reasonable to consider wanting sex once a week as a healthy expression of being a fulfilled human being
At
in
least
a
once a
relationship.
week.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Or just one, right? Like at least once, wanting it at least once. I'm not saying it has to happen OCD at least once a week. I'm saying you have in your loins a desire to make love or procreate at least one every 7 days. That's a good sign that you're healthy. I think depending on the couple, depending on the person,
Depending on the age.
depending on the age, life circumstances, that can obviously
Totally.
be more.
Yeah.
I mean, when
This is generally speaking.
when you're in your 20s, you're just rabbits, When you're in your 30s, you can still be rabbits. We've had rabbit seasons of our life. But then there are also scenarios where you just may not have an overly strong sex drive. You may have had life circumstances that
Stress might be super
Stress.
or work might be super
And
stressful.
so what I was trying to come up with was like, you can call this the Chase equation. But it's like, I think that our baseline is wanting the desire to have sex once a week. If you don't feel like every 7 days you have an earnest desire to make love, like maybe check in with yourself. And then with your partner,
You think that for both men and women.
I do. Yeah. I'm not saying you have to have it.
Yeah.
But I think that to feel the urge at least once a week to have sex is a good indicator that things are working right. And then it's just a matter of collaboration with your significant other around what you're comfortable with. Dude guy, let's say he wants sex twice a week. She wants sex 10 times a week. There's a compromise. But I think that there's a reasonableness scale around
Yeah.
at least once a week. And that you can kind of toggle up and down from there. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I generally agree with that. I think the Chase equation checks out.
I'm not saying once a week is good enough for me. So,
Right. Yeah. We're not saying that that's optimal for everyone, but generally speaking, if everything in your life is like fine, is okay, you're not dealing with like travel or major stress, or you just had a baby, or, those things, like, yes, there are exceptions, but I think most of the year and in good times, like totally, that's, I think, so reasonable. But let's be honest, usually it's the man that wants more than the woman historically.
I think so. Yeah. I think it's changing a little bit. There's a lot of like
Right. But
asexuality out there.
in
which
general-
blows my mind.
In general, usually it's when we hear about couples, it's usually the man wanting more than what the woman is wanting. And it's like, hello, testosterone. So I'd like to first invite the woman in this pretend scenario, if it is the man wanting more, to just sit in empathy before you get to the point where you're like, oh my God, you're just insatiable, or, like, geez, you have a problem or something like that. Instead of like passing judgment for having this difference, I think just sitting in empathy for like 3 seconds, where, think about every woman has had this when you're like peak ovulation and literally all you can think about is sex. Multiply that times 10.
Yeah, we ovulate every day.
Because literally men at our peak of testosterone as a woman, his is 10 times more. Like, crazy amount. Okay. So if he's healthy, right? So, just imagine that. Okay. So we're sitting in empathy for our partner. We're not passing judgment. I think, speaking to the dude guys, most women need to feel emotionally and energetically connected to their partner in order to want to open up and have sex. Okay. So if that's not happening on a regular basis in the relationship, it doesn't surprise me that, yeah, she probably is not going to want to have sex if literally you're just coming to her just to get off, just to basically use her body to
masturbate.
Exactly. That's what it is. And so like, and I think most men enjoy the connection emotionally and energetically. Of course, like it feels good as a human to just connect with, the person you love most in the world. So I think asking yourself, if you're a man and this is your situation, first, before you go to your partner and say like, I need more sex from you, go within yourself first and ask the question, has she given me any sort of information that would help her open up energetically, emotionally with me? Is there anything that I can do that I can contribute to our relationship? Maybe she shared with me before and I haven't really been great at it. Like, go within yourself first. For example, thinking about their love language is an easy one. My love language is physical touch and words of affirmation. And so when Chase is doing more of those things, of course, I feel more connected to him and I want to be then physically and sexually connected to you more. This is not an issue with us, but like the other night we're sitting watching TV. I forget what we were even watching, but just out of the blue, Chase comes over to me and like holds me on the couch for, it was like 3 minutes. It wasn't long. You were holding me and you said just, like really nice, a couple of really nice things. And because it's words of affirmation and physical touch, I feel completely like lit up. It was the best part of my day. And I am so much more open in that moment.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to have
and
sex.
beyond.
I was just
right.
like,
No,
yeah.
I know. It's just, it was a very authentic, genuine moment. And that's what I'm encouraging the men to do here is like, first, think about her love language or languages. You know, if hers is acts of service, like literally doing the dishes and taking out the garbage, as weird as it sounds, might be the thing that opens her up energetically because she sees you like doing these things that light her up, that take things off her plate, that allow her to be more in her feminine than, you know, being in the masculine, like go, go, go. I got to do all the things around the house. Like that's not sexy. So just think about your wife, her uniqueness, and what would open her up.
Well, how about this? Like, I don't hear anybody talking about this in all of these relationship spaces is, sorry if someone's out there talking about it, but have you had a conversation with your partner or your wife, your husband, about what sex is to them? Is sex intercourse? Is sex intercourse and orgasm? Is sex more than that? Is it lovemaking? Is it foreplay or significantly more than that?
Or a combination of all of those.
This is a tree that fruits a diverse array of flavors. Sex. And I think it's really helpful to be in alignment on the way that your partner perceives the act and then continue to check in because it evolves. When I was 18, it was a lot more just, are you DTF? Because I am. And we've got 30 minutes here.
Before my parents come home.
And then I think as you get older, you find real deeper, more diverse components to the sexual experience that interest you. You know, there's an emotional component, there's intimacy, there's just
different moves.
Yeah, the physicality of it.
Yeah.
For men are very visual, generally, just very visual. It's a very animalistic thing. So you'll actually support your own biology by just being a fucking animal, you know? You know, I really mean that. Like, and I'm saying it kind of in a funny way, but like, this is a very animalistic thing that we do. It's the act of procreating. And if you really want to lean into it and amplify it, like, embrace that part of yourself. And I think that a lot of people, especially from religion, have this embarrassment or this shame associated with the act of sex because it is, dude, it's freaking animal kingdom shit. And so there's, I think, just normalizing the dialogue with your partner, getting a really good understanding as to what they feel about sex just at large will only groom the run.
Yeah. And I think the last thing that I'll say, just to wrap up my string of thoughts, is if you as a dude guy are thinking about, well, I don't know what she would need. She hasn't shared that with me, or we haven't had this conversation in a while, or you're at a different phase in your life. She's a mother, you know, now, and these things might have changed for her. Just have a safe and contained conversation and truly come with curiosity about your wife, about your woman, and, you know, asking her directly, like, I want to make sure that, you know, we're connecting emotionally and energetically. You know, is there anything that I can do more of that would open you up more, or that would fill your cup more, or, you know, choose your words, like choose what you want. But the point is, you know, if you don't know the answer, go to her, initiate the conversation in a safe way. Don't be accusing, like, you're not putting out enough, or like, you don't want as much sex as I do, or whatever. Like, you know, come at it from your perspective. I really want to connect with you on a deeper level, you know, sexually. How do you see that happening ideally?
And pay attention to body language. You know, some of these conversations can be clunky at first, especially like if you have programming that makes sex taboo. But both in the physical act as well as you're talking about sex, a man who's masculine will generally, when they're interested in something, pursue. They'll step in. They'll actually lean in. If they're not interested in something, they'll be repulsed. They'll kind of push back. They'll distance themselves. They'll lose their eye contact going all over other places. And women will close off. They'll shrink if they're not interested, but they'll open up. They'll allow themselves to smile. They'll allow themselves to relax. You can sense a woman's body, the way that it starts to open or close, depending on what you're talking about or the way that you're not approaching them. And so even if you're not hearing necessarily what you need to hear literally from the mouth of the person you're talking to, pay attention to the body cues as well.
Yeah, can be definitely helpful. All right, last question here. You want to read it?
Why does it feel like we're just roommates lately?
I have many thoughts on this. You want me to go first?
Yeah, I mean, this was our marriage, right?
I think it's normal
first
for
marriage.
literally every couple at some point go through a phase where they feel like roommates. And let me just put this disclaimer out there. Sometimes it's functional, okay? Sometimes you need to be functional, roommates where you're both running the household. It's not always like bad, okay? The times when it starts to deplete us is when it's chronic and it never changes. And, we use these terms alpha and omega. Like being in alpha mode is like you're running the household, you're working on calendars. Omega is more of alpha would be more masculine. Omega is more feminine, surrender, flow, like the masculine and feminine. And you can both get into masculine mode. This is functional sometimes, but it will not spark polarity. So what you need to be mindful of in this situation is how do we increase polarity? And so I think it can go either way, and both people have responsibility in this and what they can do and what they can tweak in their own behavior. But for the woman, I'm a woman, so I'll speak to the feminine. It's really easy for us to put on our masculine hats and never take them off. And then we wonder why, we're not connecting with our person. And so a really easy way to take off your masculine hat and get into more of your feminine is to get into your body. So the masculine is when women have their masculine hats on, they might be more heady. They're in their head. They're making decisions. They're in work mode. They're not like moving and flowing with their body, right? And so, say you're coming off of work and you want to take that masculine hat off and get into your body, get into your feminine. You can literally sit in the bathroom, sit in your bedroom, sit in your car, whatever, for 5 minutes. Just close your eyes and start thinking about different areas of your body. Start breathing into your belly, get out of your breathing into your chest, like up here, breathe into your belly, think about your feet on the ground. Maybe go in the backyard, get into nature, think about or listen to the birds, feel the sunshine on your cheek. Like put your awareness on your body. You can even do like a body scan where you start at your feet, you wiggle your toes, and then you go up your body and you're thinking about and showing gratitude, feeling gratitude for your body. If you do that for 5 minutes, you will be in your body and out of your head. Now take that energy back into the evening with your man and try to, maintain that shift so you're not just getting back into masculine mode. And this can be really easy. Like it's putting on music and dancing while you make dinner. It's being flirty and touching and tickling while you clean up dinner. It's instead of watching Netflix at night, you get a good body oil and it's massage night. Like it's not hard to think of little ways. You just have to put your consciousness on it and open your mind, open yourself to like, how can I flow in this moment? How can this moment be art and be a gift to my partner?
Yeah, super, super good. Yeah, like that's absolute gold. I'll speak from the guy's perspective. One, I've seen it. I've also been in the shoes that have experienced this. And here's kind of a really normal in our culture pattern of the male side of a relationship that turns into either a serious dating relationship where you live together or a marriage. Novelty, spark flies, you meet someone, you fall in love, you are winning them over. It's a daily, weekly, monthly act to impress them, to show them that you're this king. You date for a while, you even propose or you decide to move in, and you've done it. You've accomplished this
You've
goal,
won her.
this pursuit, this knight that rescued the damsel from the tower, and you've got her to live happily ever after. Guys shut their brain off, their romantic brain off, a lot of times subconsciously at that moment. They start to pursue other things. It's their career, it's their other endeavors, it's their interests. And the relationship, it's not that it's forgotten, but they look at it like, oh, we're locked in. Here's my buddy.
She knows I love her.
Yeah, she knows I love her. She loves me. We're super compatible. We're cruising around the house together. We take care of each other's needs. It's, hey, dude, how you doing? It's very bro-y. It's very college roommate type of energy. And then, every now and then you're like, hey, let's have sex. Or like, hey, let's do something romantic. Guys can do that like a light switch is flipped on. They can just, boom, move into another dynamic really easily. What I've learned and what I've also seen, as well as I've had other guys, share this, is that doesn't necessarily work for a woman. There's a longer ramp up to being able to shift into those different roles. I'm not saying roommate mode is bad. In fact, if you can be compatible in a roommate mode with your wife or your husband, pat yourselves on the back because you've found a really killer relationship.
It's the companionate love.
It's like, yeah, exactly. And I think both of our experiences, we got divorced, we went and dated other people, and you realize like, I don't actually want to be like homies with this person. I don't like spending time with this
you
person.
You don't get my humor.
Yeah. And so honor for a minute the roommate
Yeah.
mode. It just can't be 100% of the time.
Right.
And I've used this analogy before. A relationship, the life of a relationship is like fire. That initial spark, it's happenstance, it's random, it's polarity, lightning strikes, boom, you fall in love. That was nothing to your doing. You almost kind of walk into these things haphazardly. When you lock it up, you get married. To keep the flame alive takes a different set of ingredients. You can't maybe you can wait around and lightning strikes again and the relationship's reinvigorated. Most likely you're going to have to apply kindling to the flame. You got to nurture the flame into this like everlasting fireplace type of analogy for the relationship. And that includes getting really, really aware of when novelty's worn off. You're entering this maybe really compatible roommate mode, which has its benefits, but you've lost some of the more sparky components to the relationship dynamic. So really try to interject the relationship with novelty. Try to continue to date your partner. The classic line, what it's rooted in is the continued expression of a desire to win you over. One of the things that has made part 2 so fruitful for us is we're both always trying to make each other laugh. And like there is a romantic chemistry to humor,
For us, maybe that's not everyone, but that's certainly us. And I think it is most people.
Yeah. And I think there's other ways to show that you are still interested in, I still want to know you. I know you're changing and I want to know what's going on in your world. I want to continue to show up as a better person so that you are impressed by me and that you want to be with me and that you're proud of me. And like that unwritten, unspoken understanding in a relationship is absolute like foundation of the house.
I think put really simply, I agree with everything you just said there. I think put really simply in one sentence, it's like, ask yourself, what did we do when we were dating?
Yeah, sure.
To fall in love,
Right.
right? Think of 3 things. We laughed all the time. We went out on a weekly date. We did more in nature and outside, whatever. Think of 3 things that, like contributed to your life and your dating experience such that you fell in love. And it's going to be different for every couple, right? Like our 3 things, one of them was absolutely like being goofy and silly and making each other laugh, just for the laugh. So think about the 3 things in your relationship and do more of those things. Like, I forget who said this. It might have been Jordan Peterson or, I don't know, Tony Robbins or something, but it's like
one of those dummies.
If we treated our partner like we did when we were dating, no one would ever get divorced. Like, think about that. Absolutely. If it was a healthy dating relationship, right? And it just makes so much sense. So, and something that, speaking to our life, this will be my last thought on this, just some other ideas. Like you mentioned, novelty, do something new, pack up your dinner and go eat it in a park. Like, that's free.
Yeah.
Except for the food. It doesn't have to be elaborate. Just find new ways to enjoy each other. Have sex in a room that you've never had sex before.
Right.
Even if it's like, well, the rug was really rough and I got a rug burn. It's something funny to like, just like seeking out things that inject some novelty and spark into your life.
One of the things that's been a big learning for me in just my adult life is how my body and brain will chemically react to things that are seemingly unimportant or uninteresting, just if they're novel. And like what goes on with my bodily chemistry when I step onto a new beach and it's a new set of waves and it's the sunlight on my face isn't actually that much different than just going for a walk in nature in my local park or the town that I live in. And it's just a novel activity. And you weirdly do those types of things. Like maybe you're not super hyped up about them. Like, oh, I'm going to go do this and this today. They're relatively new things. But at the end of the day, you sit down and you're like, I'm feeling this surge of excitement and energy just because I put myself into an environment that gave me a novel chemical experience. On paper, it's not as good as the beaches in Hawaii. It's just my local park that I've been meaning to check out. But oddly enough, it massively contributes to mental health, positive mental health, and relationship health.
Yep, totally agree.